All right. All right. Oh, I'll fix the back part. Okay, so we're back after a couple days. So yeah, my book since the last book talk, which was Albert Camus, my book came out. It's a thick. It's very thick. It's like the biggest book I've ever done. Check it out on the Analog Body on, and just a reminder. I got a copy of The Magic Mountain here, so we'll probably do 7 episodes, like kind of focusing on all the different chapters. And this book is 800 pages, so we'll break it up into 7 different parts. So I've kind of figured it out. So yeah, like there's another book, Robert. I forget that I used to be into Blanchot really heavily. They'll probably show up in some of my other writings if you ever see them. I'll probably publish them somehow or just put them on the internet or something. If I feel sick, if I feel a little ill, I'll just gonna put something to a friend. But yeah, Blanchot was born in September. His birthday is like right around now, September 22nd, 1907. He was a French writer, philosopher, and theorist. His work exploring a philosophy of death alongside poetic theories of meaning and sense bore influence on Gilles Deleuze, Foucault, Derrida, Jean-Luc, Nancy, and he was friends with Georges Bataille. He was kind of associated with the surrealists a little bit. And he wrote this book around 41. So and there's a couple different versions of this book too. So I think yeah, he has all sorts of books. Let's see, Thomas the Obscure, Death Sentence I read. Le Trejo I didn't read. I don't know if there's a translation of that. The Last Man, Madness of a Days I recommend. And those are narrative. His books aren't really like stories or novels so much. I mean, he kind of anticipated the Nouveau Roman a little bit. I mean, he's kind of lumped in with Bataille and Samuel Beckett sometimes. And yeah, I read some. He had a book called The Infinite Conversation, The Space of Literature I read. He wrote a lot about Lautréamont and de Sade. He had a book called Faux Pas, too. That's weird. And Friendship. Writing of the Disaster, I thought was a great book. The Unavowable Community. I guess I read more of his theoretical works and some of his essays more. And he was translated by Lydia Davis, Paul Auster, and Pierre Joris. So let's read a little bit of this. Thomas the Obscure. And yeah, I guess there's a little bit of like, I kind of read him like the same time I got into Italo Calvino, so I always kind of think of him as Italo's in the same way. So this translation's from the 70s. There's probably a different one. It came out in 41 originally, but apparently there's a couple different versions. He writes in this thing, there is for every work an infinity of possible variants. The present version adds nothing to the pages, entitled Thomas the Obscure, begun in 1932, delivered to the publisher in May 40 and published in 1941. But as it subtracts a good deal from them, it may be said to be another and even an entire new version, but identical at the same time. So, I mean, since it's an early novel, he's probably trying to be a conventional novel, and I think so. I think there was if I'm right, I think there was a condensed version and stuff. So like this is how it goes. It's pretty much written in like these kind of short things, like kind of experiences, a lot like cosmic comics. It's sort of like these sort of short. Thomas sat down and looked at the sea. He remained motionless for a time, as if he had come there to follow the movements of other swimmers. And although the fog prevented him from seeing very far, he stayed there obstinately, his eyes fixed on the bodies floating with difficulty. Then, when a more powerful wave reached him, he went down onto the sloping sand and slipped among the currents, which quickly immersed him. The sea was calm, and Thomas was in the habit of swimming for long periods without tiring. But today he has chosen a new route. The fog hid the shore. A cloud had come up. A cloud had come down upon the sea, and the surface was lost in a glow, which seemed only the only truly real thing. Currents shook him, though, without giving him the feeling of being in the midst of waves or of rolling in familiar elements. The conviction that there was, in fact, no water at all made even his effort to swim into a frivolous exercise from which he drew nothing but discouragement. Perhaps he should have had to get control of himself to drive away such thoughts, but his eye found nothing to cling to, and it seemed to him that he was staring into the void with the intention of finding help there. It was then that the sea, driven by the wind, broke loose. The storm tossed it, scattered it into inaccessible regions. The squalls turned the sky upside down, and at the same time, there reigned a silence and a calm which gave the impression that everything was already destroyed. Thomas sought to free himself from the insipid flood which was invading him. A piercing cold paralyzed his arms. The water swirled in whirlpools. Was it actually water? One moment, the foam leapt before his eyes in whitish flakes. The next, the absence of water took hold of his body and drew it along violently. His breathing became slower. For a few moments, he held in his mouth the liquid which the squalls drove against his head, a tepid sweetness, strange brew of a man deprived of a sense of taste. Then, whether from fatigue or an unknown reason, his limbs gave him the same sense of foreignness as the water in which they were tossed. This feeling seemed almost pleasant at first. As he swam, he pursued a sort of reverie in which he confused himself with the sea, intoxicating of leaving himself, of slipping into the void, of dispersing himself into the thought of water, made him forget every discomfort. And even when this ideal sea, which he was becoming more, even more, ever more intimately, uh, had in turn become the real sea in which he was virtually drowned. He had not moved as he should have been. Of course, there was something intolerable about swimming this way, aimlessly with a body which was of no use to him beyond thinking that he was swimming, but he also experienced a sense of relief as if he had finally discovered the key to the situation. And as far as he was concerned, it all came down to continuing his endless journey with an absence of organism in the absence of the sea. The illusion did not last. He was forced to roll from one side to the other like a boat adrift in the water, which gave him a body to swim. What escape was there? To struggle in order not to be carried away by the wave, which was his arm, to go under, to drown himself bitterly in himself? That would surely have been the moment to stop, but a hope remained. He went on swimming as if deep within the restored core of his being, he had discovered a new possibility. So, yeah, I mean, he just kind of, it's mainly experiences and stuff. Like, just kind of like him, like a man alone in the world. And then just that whole first section, then he kind of and then he goes to the hotel. He's at these. I mean, this book, it could be read like it's almost like a Edgar Allan Poe. See, I think there's Okay, so let's see. What do these guys say? Okay, so that's the end. So he says this translation presents the second version of Thomas the Obscure, the only version available at this time. The original work was designated as a novel, the revision as a récit. Three-quarters of the bulk of the original disappeared in the process. It is tempting in this context to give away some of the secrets of the complex rhetoric of this rich work, to analyze them, to beg the reader to realize that the fact that much of the discomfort he will experience in confronting the work is due to other factors than the translator's failure to iron out the difficult points. Suffice it to say that the translator's energies and abilities have been taxed principally to respect and retain the author's level of difficulty of challenge to the reader to translate at once the clarity and the opacity of the original. So, so there's a little essay here at the end too. So so he wrote a book, and then he he 10 years later he just kind of wrote, um, he kind of just took the essence of the book, because that was more, that probably had characters and plot and dialogue, and he removed all that. And let's see, Susan Sontag says of the small number of unimpeachable major original voices in modern French literature, that of Blanchot has waited the longest to find an audience in English. And then Sorrentino says, though more than 40 years, the French writer has produced an astonishing body of criticism, a profound theoretical investigation of literature and those who make it. So these are all published by Station Hill. They published Death Sentence, Madness of the Day, a lot of the other books I mentioned. I remember reading, what was it? Yeah, The Madness of the Day. I read that, like Kathy Acker read that. She was really impressed with that. She thought it was really good. Okay, so that's enough of Blanchot. I recommend reading this guy. Uh, Probably hard to find. There might be, I haven't looked, but there might be like some kind of collection that has a lot of his books put together. And if you read Georges Bataille, a lot of people say his name wrong. He's called, I forgot. I was watching some review, and she called him something else, but it's Bataille, French. You don't pronounce it's not Batal. Okay. Okay. Well, I'm going to be right back. We're going to be talking about a couple more authors today, so stick around for the next one.